Hi, my name is Alondra Reyes Avalos. I am the Spanish resident at Making Moves Academy, and I am part of the Richmond cohort, which is mashed up now with the Aspire cohort. And this is my Master Orth translation. So to start off, a little bit about me and a little bit of my college background. I did start at Concordia University of Irvine. I unfortunately was not able to afford it, so I did end up leaving after the first week, which led for me to transfer and attend Mount San Antonio College in Walnut City, which is located in SoCal. Um, After doing my first semester there, I did come back home to the Bay Area, and I attended Diablo Valley College in Concord, where I got my GEs. I finished and got my certificate and my associates in sociology. After doing that, I went ahead and transferred to UC Merced, where I graduated this past year with my bachelor's in sociology. And just a little bit more of who I am. I am a bilingual first generation college graduate. Like I said, I graduated last year. And at a young age, one of my biggest struggles was learning the English language when the primary language spoken at my household was primarily Spanish. It just made me feel embarrassed as a kid. Kids are mean and they could bully based on how you speak. But throughout the years of education and completing the residency program and just taking courses that really taught me about the power of my language, it just allowed me to understand that my first language was actually one of my greatest assets, which eventually, led me to teach what I teach nowadays. So I teach Spanish because I really want to make sure I'm empowering the language and I'm empowering all these kids that, are native speakers primarily. Which leads on to my philosophy of education. When we read some of the readings for I think it was Ed 200, and we read Zaretta Hammond's book of Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. There was one quote that really, really stood out to me from Hammond that I go by and I literally feel like summarizes my life. It says, "I'm a firm believer that everything in life happens for a reason, and I came upon teaching for a reason. My lived experiences have shaped my teaching philosophy of trust and relationship building, self-advocacy for all students, while taking on a culturally responsive teaching approach." For me, becoming a teacher is such an important role because I grew up in a city that did not have many caring teachers. I was just in a classroom that just lacked of that student teacher connection. I saw them as people who were just trying to understand our struggles as low income communities. However, the connection was just unfortunately not there. And that is something that is my why. Knowing that I went through this, my why is that I want to change for my students in the future. I want that to change for them. I want to be their mentor, their friend, someone they can rely on, and someone to whom they can relate to. We lack that teacher connection. I want to make sure my students are able to relate, mostly because I did grow up in Richmond. I do have background here. And just what that quote said, life happens. I mean, I just said I attended 4 colleges. And that all led me to where I am right now, to where I am in teaching. And just all these lived experiences I have literally shaped my teaching philosophy, because I want to make sure, that with what I went through and my struggles, that I really just make sure that I'm a mentor and I'm there for my students and I am accommodating and making them feel as equitable as possible. So that will move me on to the head, which is my research. So understanding that society played a huge role in identity development allowed me to comprehend and begin to just reconcile these conflicting identities that we have. Because as we know, society, creates an identity for you, but I just want something I really wanted to make sure is I understood the topic of just making sure that my students found their own identities within themselves. And by acknowledging that, I knew that I needed to just expand my knowledge on the topic. So learning about, theories like Ferrier or Dr. Benita Love inspired my teaching because these theories taught me to show love and compassion, all while still fighting to regain the loss of humanity in the school system. Just like Paulo says in this quote, learning is a process where knowledge is presented to us, then shaped through understanding, discussion, and reflection. By doing so, I now comprehend that individuals will just, they are going to need time. They're going to need a safe space. Well, they will learn about, all these injustices that happen in society, unfortunately, and learn that they will have or have faced this in the world, all while still learning to understand themselves and feel loved and appreciated. And, still with them gaining the knowledge they need to push back at that society and really rebuild these identities, you know? So, kind of like Paulo said, the pedagogy of the oppressed, the person who is oppressed is also the oppressor. So I just want to make sure that these students have a safe room where, we're going to talk about these injustices, we're going to bring them to light, but they also have time to really reflect on themselves and really create their own identity. By doing this and creating a safe space, it will allow for students to get a head start on growing and understanding themselves before even just heading out into the real world. So for the head, something I also learned about was UDL theory, or teaching mechanism. And this is huge. This is what I live by. This is what I live for. Like, if you do not have UDL in your presentations, you're probably lacking something. And by considering the UDL guidelines during the lesson planning phase, sorry, I should have introduced it. So there is a quote from Rao and Mal that says, by considering the UDL guidelines during the lesson planning phase, teachers can build in flexible pathways from the outset, integrating elements that address the range of backgrounds, preferences, abilities, and needs of their students and ensure that their lessons are comprehensible and engaging for all. So here are just a few examples. Like I said, I really want to make sure that the students are understanding about the injustices and equitable situations that are happening in our society. So I'm using, the range of backgrounds that they know, their abilities, just to ensure that these students are understanding 100% what's going on. So an example is that we're talking about inequalities, injustices, in this unit, and this is just an example of how I situate my do now. So I have a timer just to make sure that the students feel on track and they're not left behind. I use images because visuals is really important for that representation aspect of UDL. Visuals of the expectations in the classroom, making sure that we set that up. The words are usually highlighted. The questions are highlighted. The sentence starters for them are highlighting in other colors. I also put videos if they need to watch a quick video with subtitles. It's a whole representation, action and expression and engagement portion. Just to make sure my lesson planning across the board is as equitable and comprehensive and engaging as possible for the students. So for the head, I want to start off with this quote from Geneva Gay. It says, the best quality education for ethnically diverse students is a much culturally responsive as it is developmentally appropriate, which means using their cultural orientations, background, experiences, and ethnic identities as conduits to facilitate their teaching and learning. Okay. So, knowing the student's background is very important if you really want to build that student relationship. Off the bat, if you do not have a heart to teach, maybe you chose the wrong profession. And for me, building student relationship was huge. Making sure I am aware of their background, making sure I'm just building this relationship with the students to know what it is that they face, what issues may be conflicting with why they're not performing well in class, and just making sure that whatever it is that's going on in their life, I am making them feel as safe as possible. So these are just a few examples of the relationships I've built with my students. These students are like my babies. I adore them so much. These right here in the middle are my juniors. On my left side is advisory, the seniors. This is my sister, and just this is a note from Teacher Appreciation Week, and I'm gonna just read a glimpse that says, "Thank you both of you guys. When I am in your class, I feel like I can be myself more. Even though sometimes I do act up a lot, I of course have learned a lot throughout the years. For example, being more responsible. Also, when I am in your class, I feel most safe, and if I have something in my mind, I feel like I can talk about it with both of you guys." Just, that small thing, just it made me realize, and it made me feel that, like, wow, like, I somehow am doing something good. I'm making sure that I am creating a safe environment for these students. I am making sure that I am just making it as equitable and as fun and engaging, and taking all of their personalities and their backgrounds into consideration, their culture, making it as diverse as possible. So at the end of the day, they just feel like they feel comfortable in my classroom. Like, come on, if you wouldn't feel comfortable in a classroom, you would not walk in as Spider-Man. And something Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade said, which I am excited because he's going to be the spokesperson. He's going to be the speaker at our ceremony. He says, an equitable education is better defined as a culturally relevant education in that it is designed to address the material conditions of students' lives while maintaining a high level of intellectual rigor. Okay, that being said, yes, I am aware of my students' background. Yes, I am having a heart for them. I am coming in to make sure that they are aware of these injustices, these inequities, making them feel as inclusive as possible while finding their identities. But it does not mean that I am going to bring the level of rigor down in the classroom. I am actually going to push them to their full potential. I'm going to push them to just maintain that high level of intellectual that I know that they have. And that is by making sure I'm connecting theories and I'm connecting backgrounds like these, like the Latinx community, Afro Latinos are very looked down upon, or they're not incorporated into lesson planning, which is why for Black History Month I did that. I wanted to make sure that any of my Afro Latino students, Afro Latinx students feel inclusive. And that is why, I put a video just in case anyone needs to be hearing this. I have visuals. I have, pictures. I had them do this poster where they were looking for Afro Latinx people who maybe they don't even know about. And they're looking for, like, what are they successful for? And then I had them, share out on Padlet. Just different ways to keep them engaged, all while talking about, injustices, inequities, or just being aware of other things like Afro Latinx people or the community, having them go on Padlet, having them comment on pictures, just all while we're listening to some Afro Latinx music. Like, yes, like, it was just making sure I'm as inclusive as possible. Talking about these just social injustices, sexism, classism, racism, equality, At the end of the day, like, I want them to understand that, like this quote says, own your identity, love who you are in the world, because your identity, who you find yourself to be and who you learn to be, is going to make a huge impact in the world, and just love that for yourself. Okay, and then I'm going on to the hands. For the hands, like I said, die by UDL, the representation portion, which is learning about just different Latin American countries, all while still learning about the unit topics. So an example of this is we are talking about recycling in this unit, and we're talking about the unit all while still being inclusive with different cultures. An example is this infographic is from Europe. This video is from Guatemala, which is amazing. It was talking about how they recycle, and this proves my point that recycling and using all recyclable material is 100% possible. Then we used an article that talked about pajilla or popote. We really made the connection with these words, like how do we also say straws. And then we connected it back to their community. So just a representation of different Latin American countries and just different cultures. For action and representation, which is this one, I have them do things like creating a poster, because maybe I have someone that's really artistic in my classroom, so I have them do this portion of the poster. Do your 5 drawings. Or maybe someone is better at coming up with words, so they have 5 words. Or maybe someone is just good at writing their sentences. So when working in a group, everyone is going to be strong or is going to have a forte at something. I also do things like Gimkit, and my non-native students love Gimkit because they're able to practice their vocabulary words on Gimkit all while playing a game. There's either Fishtopia, Tagalong, like there's so many fun things. And then in portions of engagement, having students engage in different activities. An example is maybe I have a student, or maybe I have students that are good at, debating. So I have them do the debate. I have them prepare. I also have them do this poster. So maybe I have students who are good at drawing, good at words, good at writing sentences. Maybe there's someone that is very strong at looking at infographics, or looking for sources to use to include in their Google Doc. Every single student is going to have something to do, and I just want to make sure that they are engaged in what it is that they do. They also do things like create slides, watch videos. An example is I have them assign themselves papeles, roles, and then they go ahead and I don't know where I can find it. Oh, right here, sorry. They go ahead and go on their diapositiva, and then they work on their posters, they work on their little section. I broke up the section of the infographic with their things. They go ahead and go and present in front of the classroom. It is really good for presentation. It is very good for presentation. And then at the end, for the future, I am talking about literally next year. Like, the future is coming, and I am still sticking to the same thing. I am sticking to UDL. I am going to learn how to use it even better in my lesson planning. I am really gonna focus on not only equity in my classroom, but showing them empowerment. Mostly with all these injustices, all these issues going on in society, I really want to make sure that they feel well aware. I need to learn more theories. I could well educate myself. And honestly, this book, Cultivating Genius by Dr. Muhammad, was one of my favorite readings. And this quote right here: "It is our job as educators to not just teach skills, but also to teach students to know, validate, and celebrate who they are." I feel like this, and my quote that I always say, "We are the future, we are the change," is going to always stick with me. I am always going to continue to educate myself with these issues. It is something I feel very passionate about, and I really just want to teach students. First and foremost, I want to be their mentor. I want to be someone who they can really see themselves and, have that connection. But I also want to make sure that they're learning about these injustices, this information that they need to know, all while still learning how to validate and learn about their own self-identities and celebrate who they are. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.